Alrighty, NFL Week 14 covers football betting contest countdown show. He is LVC in a bit of a scramble this morning, dealing with tech issues, dealing with some bets coming in and out, and dealing with a fresh, clean shave. Look at it. You're looking bright, vibrant, youthful. You've got everything working this morning.
Well, my results this past weekend were so scary. My whiskers wanted to hide from the public also. So
you're going for the mid-season or late-season switch, changing things up.
Yeah.
You know what I do? I never have the clear enough sort of dispersion of hair to grow a solid beard. But the one thing I change, phone background and computer desktop background. When things are going rough, you make the switch, changes things up pretty nicely.
Well, I'm going to run out of things to change.
One of those seasons. Someone who does not need to change anything. The head of marketing over here at Covers, Mr. Andrew Garvin, celebrating a big win on the quarterly, tying with a good friend of yours, Mr. Steve Fezzik, for second place, among a few others. And we're going to bring him a little bit of pain here. Russell Gage, at the end of the game for Atlanta, costing him a good $70,000 to $80,000 in what would have been a first place split with two other people. This is a bit of a heartbreaker. There was the late drive after the Tampa Bay field goal, which was not in and of itself a guarantee, because the Buccaneers could have ran the clock out, but they ran for a loss on first down. We're not able to pick the first. So the Falcons had this miracle drive, the drop, which we keep reliving here to the chagrin of Mr. Andrew Garvin. But fun quarterly wrapped up. Now we into the last quarter. The season's going away quickly, is it not?
Yeah, I was just trying to get going.
I'm with you. It seemed like it took about 7 or 8 weeks for really to get in the swing of things, and now we're getting to the end. It never really settled.
It's been a very odd year, and I was thinking about it this morning, and a full season of NFL football is such a small window, realistically, of games and input, so to speak. I barely do hockey, and I have bet more hockey, which just started, games than I have NFL games. So it really is a small slice of long-term profitability or results or process, just a single season.
So Andrew finished 17-3 for the quarter. There was one winner at 18-2. We're into the final quarter now. For the season overall, there's two tied at the top, Hannibal Barca and Jay Jarvis, 117. Those two guys have been near the top the entire season. 46-19 is the overall record, 46 points. The difference between this season and any of the other seasons past, obviously the extra week at the end of the season that was added in. So that's going to make things a little bit interesting in the final quarter. Got a good friend of mine in the show, Clev TA, in there, 44 points, a very well-respected handicapper on the NFL side. So things starting to spread out a little bit at the top of the leaderboard here. You can't maintain collectively across 40 people 70+% for the duration of the season. So we're starting to see it thin out just a little bit at the top, but interesting final couple of weeks here down the stretch. Dead Money Media in with a comment. The offsides call against Pitt on the block kick week 4 against Green Bay cost me $120,000 of the first quarter prize. Game of inches. Yeah, you can add that into the drop with Gage. LVC, you've been Titan a couple quarters. Titan obviously finishing atop a lot of contests. Any close calls with you that stand out over the last couple of contests that you've played?
I've perhaps next week I can discuss it. The one thing I do want to point out with these consensuses is, you can't get over, you can't change your process. If you're being successful, you can't change too much of the recipe and get concerned with the wrong things. It's now that we're in the home stretch, having been there, I always felt I had an advantage by just taking care of my own business And I knew too many people would be thinking about the money and would start to change the way they play. And I mean, I hate to give out the secret sauce, but I think it's a real advantage to those people that realistically play to win and don't even think about the money, because you could tell, because I tracked the people each week that were around me because I wanted to see what they were doing. And you could see that people changed, and there was more. You could see there was groups of people that were part of the herd, and the people that did their own thing stuck out, and you knew that they were going to stick out every week. So I'm feeling generous. I think that's a real secret sauce to maintaining success and advancing for the people that are right way the hell up there. For people trying to get in the money, it's, take care of yourself first. Don't screw up your process. Don't think about it too much. I've had a lot of people contact me on DMs and asking for advice and stuff. And, perhaps the pendulum swings too far where people start to worry about other people too much in situations that it doesn't matter. So it's really more of just being aware and having an awareness of things in a fashion that doesn't disrupt your process too much. Because when you think long, you think hard. You've got to, keep with that flow.
2 questions on my part. The first one is a selfish one for me. I've been right on the edge of the money in or out the entire year. It's been like one game either way that I've either been in it or I've just been on the outside. And I very much just gone through and picked what I like each week and not really thought too much about it. There's now 5 weeks to go in the season, 25 picks remaining. At what point where I'm sitting on the edge do I have to start sort of deviating away from it? Because just continuing to get there, I'm probably realistically don't have a chance at one of the top 5, but in order to sort of advance up the ladder a little bit, do I not have to take some risk at some point here going against some of the prices that are out there that I think a lot of people are going to be on?
I think it's more of a case of just avoiding, you don't take, I see, like, I wouldn't be taking opposite sides of anything. I think that's horrible advice. I would choose games differently, possibly. But again, the most important thing is to not overthink and disrupt your process. Hopefully you have more than 5 or 6 games that you can choose from each week that you can tolerate having. And if you have 7 games you can tolerate, then you're going to easily be able to pick out 2 games that you like that, well, maybe it's not a good idea for me to take that side for whatever reason. And so that's the best advice that I could give you is, do your best to come up with 7 or 8 games, and then when it's time to put the picks in, say to yourself, maybe it's not a good idea to be on the herd with that one, or maybe it's not a good idea to be against the herd on that one, because you're essentially playing, if you're going against the herd, if the herd is going to be at the opposite side of a game, you're essentially playing that game anyway. So you don't have to play that game.
Just stay away from the bigger ones that are going to get a lot of picks and try to find one elsewhere and let that game fall as it may.
Yeah, possibly. But if you're really short on picks too, and it's a game that you like, then by default, you might have to do it. So
the second question on that note, you said that you noticed that people were changing. I was listening to Fezzik give his breakdown. He tied with Andrew for the quarterly, and he was very adamant about the leader in first going into last week, who had the 1-game lead. His big point that stood out to me, he's obviously been around the contest game a long time, pretty confident you know him as well. He was saying that he was confident the leader was going to pick the Monday night game to give himself a direct opportunity to hedge. Is that very common that when you see things like this, when it's tightening up, the Monday games start to get selected by the top guys at a higher frequency? Is that a real thing in contest?
Yeah, he has a good point to a certain degree. You can't. I mean, you have to know your player, so that's why you need to track your player for weeks and weeks, and it's not something you easily can do looking back over time, because then it's not as easy to understand the mentality of those games at the time. Does that make sense? It when you forgot what the mood and the climates and all the situations were if you're checking back to what the guy did 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. But if you're making a mental note as you're going along, well, then you have things in a little bit of a better perspective. But yeah, I mean, last year I used the Sunday night game as one of my games, but there was no way around it. That was a solid play. It was so far off market, and I was taking it anyway. I had no choice. If I had the chance to leave, there is no Monday night game on the final week, by the way.
Right. Yep.
But I'm not going to. Yeah, I don't really. I mean, when you have the quarterlies ending, then yeah, maybe you're going to use that Monday night. But so's a lot of other people. So if you know that if you know a lot of people that are bunched with you are going to do that same thing, well, then you know you're going to tie with a lot of people, aren't you?
Right, and then that doesn't get you anywhere one way or the other.
It gets back to what I was saying at the beginning: is are you playing to win or are you playing to hedge?
Right.
So you have to decide what kind of a player you're going to be. Are you playing to win? Or are you playing to hedge? Are you playing? And it is smart to put yourself in those positions, but then you can overthink it, and then the strategies become too well known. And now all of a sudden, instead of dodging right, you dodge left again when everybody else starts to follow that same strategy.
Yeah, you get on the wrong. You're zigging when everyone's zagging, and one of those, or you're zagging when they're zigging. It's one way or the other, and you get stuck, and now you're all twisted up yourself.
You just don't want to be in a position where, if you can avoid being in, you don't purposely avoid the herd, but if you can avoid being with the herds, that's what you want to do.
Contest strategy, it always gets fun, especially this time of the year as we get down to the final 5 weeks, and you can kind of see the path to the finish for a lot of these guys at the leaderboard. And then there's folks like myself trying to do something to get into the money and maybe make something of the season that has been odd, to say the least, especially from the contest perspective. Speaking of odd, week 14, we've got some numbers. There's flu games, there's COVID outbreaks, there's a couple numbers here, especially the Cleveland one that's at a 3, which you're not going to be too happy about. Well, the rest of the market's at 2.5. There's Denver up to 10 in a game that nobody knows who's in, who's out. There's a lot going on. We're trying to pick the top 5 consensus games as we do every week. In my opinion, and this is going to be probably a bit of a tricky one, there's 2 games at bigger numbers that stand out that I think are going to be overwhelmingly popular. The first one is Seattle. The second one is the Tennessee Titans. And we've seen maybe lesser so the Titans as that number's come down. But I think with what's coming out of Houston, that locker room now swirling with rumors about how Culley's handling some of the players, the disciplinary actions, Seattle off of a win where I think people looked at it saying, okay, after that Monday night performance, now the offense is corrected, and it's a huge mismatch. But these 2 numbers that have been proven to be popular everywhere else, do we see that carry over in the contest? What do you think? Seattle minus 8.5. Immediate head shake.
I don't know. I don't know. It's what was the other one you said? Tennessee.
Tennessee against the Jacksonville Jags, who just get pummeled by the Rams. LA took late money in that game. We've seen now a couple times both the Texans and the Jags have been in these bigger numbers, and money's gone on the favorite late, and that to me has been the one standout this year is the late money buying big favorites on Sunday, the day of the game. It's usually going the other way. This season it's just been wide open and a lot of the times, and it's been rewarded like it was last week. So I don't know who's running to bet the Jags after seeing what happened last week, especially in contest.
Yeah, I think the Tennessee one, it looks pretty good. If you like that one in, I agree with that one.
I'm with you there. My personal betting opinion at a much different number perhaps disagrees, but now at 8.5 with Tennessee and Julio Jones going to be back on the field, I think that's intriguing enough for people to ultimately get involved. So we have at least one.
Okay, you only got 4 left.
Yeah, you're saying no to Seattle.
I'm saying I don't know.
Okay. From here, for me at least, it gets a little bit murky. So obviously the Chargers, big number at 10. You're going to get the Giants without Daniel Jones, without Mike Glennon. All things point to Jake Fromm getting the start. The Chargers had the COVID situation, but it seems like despite the reports and how they were able to manipulate some of the dates, they're only going to be without Keenan Allen. Everyone else that was on the COVID list is going to be playing. Is 10 too big of a number for people to lay with the Chargers off a big win against Cincinnati, against the Giants with Jake Fromm?
I like that one better than I like Seattle for a consensus play, possibly.
Okay, we'll put this one on the fringe. When we get kind of beyond here, I think things get a little bit messy. The one game that immediately stood out to me with the numbers when they came out, the Ravens are at 3. So if we look at the market right now, Circa's there on Cleveland, 3 even money, and then a couple of offshores are at 3, but no one else really showing a true 3 yet. Ravens catching a field goal in a rematch of a game we all saw Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago. Ravens in that game won 16-10, but they went off as a little more than the field goal favorite. Now we get the venue flip, and all of a sudden they're a field goal underdog. Too much for a lot of contest players?
You know what? Baltimore is, the news got out that Jackson's been the worst quarterback in the league since week 5. He's actually rated lower than the 30 quarterbacks there are. So, and they're basically fielding a mash unit, and the Browns coming off a bye, almost fully healthy. Despite Mayfield's performance, I think people are going to support the Browns here, but that 3 is a very strong number. If it was 2.5, the Browns would be in there for sure.
So there's, with it being at the full 3, that's not enough to turn it the other way.
I'm supposed to bet the Ravens this week, and I can't stomach it. So I haven't I haven't bought my ticket yet. So if I'm supposed to bet it and I can't bring myself to bet it,
1,000 people in the contest probably not doing it either.
I don't know, but I've been going the different ways the whole season.
So let me give you this one then. So we'll get away from the bigger numbers here. We'll go San Francisco now in the contest lines, locked in -1.5. Joe Burrow not at practice for the second day in a row. Last week he was injured, hurt his hand on a follow through against the helmet. After that play, the Bengals offense just completely fell off a cliff. He's wearing a helmet, which wasn't the case on Wednesday. He's much less than 100%. Just as we came on air, we saw this market number tick up a little bit. We're now at like San Francisco -2. We're putting ourselves in a bit of a tough spot here trying to make this call Thursday morning. But you have to think that at this number, if Burrow's not 100% with that potential, this could be, come Saturday afternoon, a very popular contest pick. Because if Burrow's not in or he's less than 100%, this surely trends up towards 3.
Yeah, I mean, this one is sort of one you just have to leave off to the side right now, because I think it's a game that draws a lot of interest for both sides. You can make a strong case for either of these teams at this point, completely dependent on health. I mean, I had the Bengals last week, and they lost how many people through the, from before the game and during the first half? It was ridiculous. Who was left playing? So, and where are all those players? Are they all back? So
it's a giant question mark, but definitely one that if Burrow's health is impacted, it's going to be a big move within that number, no question. So We're making no headway here, but
Nope.
at least we're eliminating games. We've got Tennessee. We've got LA. Dead money media coming in. Dallas will be top 5. That's where I was going next. So Dallas gets defensive reinforcements. They're going to have, for the first time all season, full health of their pass rush. Offensively, I think this is the game that we've talked about it all year. There's like that first level of kind of like the handicapping done that's just beyond like, this is a huge mismatch. Everyone's going to bet it. To me, this is the game that there's enough people on from the popular media shows, but also when you just do that first level of handicapping, you see a Dallas trio of wide receivers against a Washington secondary that's very overrated. And then on the other side, you get all those guys coming back for the Dallas pass rush against this Washington offense that has been reliant on a lot of third down and red zone success the last few weeks. You're grinning because you agree or because you are completely on the other side?
Well, I just see it differently because I think Washington's on the roll. They've, 4 games in a row?
4 games in a row as an underdog.
And you're talking about a home underdog in a divisional rivalry getting more than 4. That's going to attract a lot of people.
So you think it goes the other way for Washington being a top 5?
I think you're going to have a lot of people on both sides.
Do we have a both sides selection here?
I don't think so.
1,000. Well, we're seeing the 1,000 pick mark decrease week after week. Things get a little bit murky. Do we get like 850 aside on both of these? Live a little.
I just think that there's going to be a lot of support on both sides. You're a hell of a lot more optimistic that the Cowboys will get more than the Redskins than I am. It has nothing to do with the handicap, of course. I'm just talking about the perspective. I've heard of, all week long how, hey, these divisional rivalries late in the season at home, it's just too much for people to pass up. It just looks too tasty because, Dallas can still win the game by 3 or 4 and they're still walking to the window.
All right. So I'm not opposed to the idea of having both of these sides potentially included, but we'll circle back to that. Las Vegas, Kansas City, pardon me. Another big number, KC at 10. Too many on either side for there ultimately to be interest here?
I don't see interest in that game. I've heard all week long nobody wants to touch that game. I don't want to touch that game. You want to touch that game?
I'm not touching that game. Nobody's touching that game. Saints, Jets. New Orleans laying 5 on the road. Taysom Hill playing with 9 fingers.
I know.
It's ugly. This is the most difficult week we've had by a mile, which means we might finally have more than 3 correct selections in a week. That's the rate that this is going. Saints at 5. Does that draw interest? It's a short number against a Jets team that can't cover, but do the Saints have anyone to throw to with Harris now suspended for 3 games?
I think people have given up on both of those teams. I think they both nauseated people to the point where it's just an instant keep away.
It's horrible.
I actually believe. I think people may do those Packers.
12.5. Big number, but the Bears, everything is going the wrong direction. There was just a report about Allen Robinson, whether or not he was at practice. That's now lingering, but there's injuries on the defensive side. At 12.5, we've seen, I believe it's 3 games all season above double digits that have made the top 5 for consensus. At 12.5, you think Green Bay gets there?
I think it's a better option than what we've discussed, quite frankly.
So where do you put this relative to the Chargers against the Giants? Everything is trending in the right direction for Allen Robinson.
Well, I like the Chargers better than I like Green Bay.
You like the Chargers more than you like Green Bay for the top 5. But then when it comes to Green Bay, is there anything else that we like in the top 5 that is stronger than Green Bay? The Rams, Arizona at less than a field goal. It's a Monday night game, which we've seen 3 or 4 Monday nighters make it in the top 5. We were talking about how the frequency of seeing Monday night games increases later in the year. We're looking at a number less than a field goal. Is there any intrigue on the Monday nighter?
I think the Rams Arizona is a candidate for both sides.
So reasoning there is that there's been support for the Cardinals the entire season that I feel like, and maybe you're in the same way, hasn't fully been realized like collectively as a market. Is that fair to say that as good as they've been, it's been more like the NFL Network or the ESPN type of support because of the win-loss record, but that full-on support within the betting market, it's not entirely there yet. This might be the week to change that.
No, it's Rams definitely have more betting support
for sure,
and Cardinals have been under the radar because they went in their little valley. They've had their injury issues, and they've just been a steady Eddie. They haven't, I think, they had a couple of wins that were sort of chalked up as, quote, lucky wins. What was wrong with the other team type wins, if that makes any sense?
They were winning with Colt McCoy like it was nothing.
Right. So it feels like they blame the losing team more than gave kudos to Arizona in those situations, doesn't it?
That's very well put. That's a good way to describe it. And there was like you mentioned, there was like that 3-week stretch plus the bye where we almost forgot about this team, but they were overcoming all of the injuries on both sides of the football and just quietly winning and getting by. And it's almost like for a 10-2 team, it's like a lack of appreciation almost for how they were sort of able to weather everything that they dealt with. And now they're getting healthy on the other side of it. And in many ways, like it's almost a benefit for now getting everyone back healthy, rested for the stretch run, and what's going to be a competitive NFC. So when we're looking at 2.5 here, the Rams off of kind of a get-right spot against Jacksonville. Like you mentioned, they've been supported by the betting market a lot throughout the season. But if we're looking at 2.5 either way, you mentioned potential candidate from both sides, but if you're picking one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's going to get 50-50, don't you?
And then the question is, do we get more than 1,800 combined picks on this game to get both in the top 5? Are we just, as we go through this, seeing how much we're struggling without clear, obvious choices? Is that maybe the indication that there is going to be a double side?
Yeah, I think it's quite possible. I think the Bills are going to get some play too.
At 3.5.
Yeah.
So despite the loss on Monday night, despite the struggles they've had, there's Dead Money Media coming in. He's been on point the entire season within his comments. Tampa Bay Buffalo could get big numbers on both sides also. We're essentially down to the Packers at 12.5, something from Dallas, Washington, something from the Monday nighter, and then this Tampa Bay Buffalo game. We've got, if I'm recapping here, we've got the Titans at 8.5, which we both feel good about. And then we were mentioning the Chargers at 10 against the Giants. You were saying you like the Chargers at 10 more than you like the Packers, but then we have these 3 games. How do we fill out this top 5?
Well, I think you got to throw Atlanta in the mix too.
2.5 point dog against Carolina.
Boy, that would have been number 1 for sure at 3.
Interesting poll. I'm thinking that's 50-50 too.
Yeah, I guess.
Like every week we've done this, there's been one game that's like, that's the one. And we just knock it off right away. And I think even to an extent, we did that with Tennessee. But that was like, I don't feel like Tennessee compared to other weeks is like that slam dunk number 1 that's going to be in the top 5. Like, do you get that impression either?
No. This is
a tough one.
This is, you know what? You're probably going to see it just all over the place this week because they're with the information that we have on an early Thursday morning, obviously there's going to be news that's going to change this and make 2 or 3 of these games very easy to predict on a Saturday. But at this point, it's a crapshoot. There's just, too much of the unknown.
So let me propose this. Let's take a stab at this one. We got Tennessee, LA, and Green Bay. Those are 3 big favorites that we think are going to be quite popular. When you're looking at the other side, there's not a lot that can change between now and kickoff that's going to drastically change any interest that the underdog on the other side might have. So we're looking at these three teams as pretty popular choices in pretty one-sided matchups. So I feel like these three are kind of like safe selections. But then we're looking at either Buffalo or the Rams in Arizona to be 4 and 5, but I think we have to come back to that Dallas-Washington game. So Buffalo at 3.5. Is there intrigue there for you above the field goal?
Yeah, I think Buffalo's going to get picked. I think Buffalo will make the top 5.
I'm thinking that Buffalo's the if this was 3, I think it's Tampa. At 3.5, I think Tampa probably is in like the 700 to 800 range, but I think the Bills exceed that. I think it's a very popular game both ways, but I think Buffalo has the better chance of a crack at 1,000 picks than Tampa Bay would at 3.5. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're on to Monday night, and then of those two, it has to be Arizona's the more popular of the two. Like we've identified it as a popular game, but with the number now being the opposite situation at 2.5, Arizona has to be the popular side there rather than the Rams.
No, I agree with that.
Okay. So now the question is that we've sort of rounded this out is that Dallas-Washington game. So we think it's going to be a popular side. We were very divided on it. Do either of those two sides get more than Buffalo or Arizona? Is the handicap on that game more divisive?
Which side do you think is going to get the most at 4.5? You think the Cowboys are going to get the most, huh?
I think the Cowboys get bet quite a lot. It's a team that's had no issue getting support, and you see them on now back-to-back. Well, we'll give them the Thursday game. It's the extra rest, but I don't think 3 days of extra rest is like enough to just have people kind of look over it. But like against the Saints, they win, they cover, everyone gets rewarded for that. Now they're back in a Sunday game for the first time in a couple of weeks. I think it sets up well against Washington, where I know Washington's been winning. I know they've been covering, but even like that Seattle game, which was really like the last big reference point, they didn't look like they won by 2 points, whatever it was with the late Seattle field goal, but like it wasn't a dominant blowout win. And the same thing happened last week against the Raiders. It was a tight game the whole way. They win late. Like it's as much as they've been winning and covering, none of it's been dominant. And now it's like a similar price point we've seen them at the last few weeks. I don't know. I think just Dallas in this matchup gets a lot of attention.
I think you clouded your play on Dallas with what the overall perspective is going to be.
It could be possible too. There could be some bias.
I mean, that's my opinion. And I could be wrong, but I think we should chuck Green Bay out of consideration. We've got the Chargers, we've got Tennessee, Buffalo, Arizona. We just need that 5th team. Do we agree with there?
Yep. And the 5th team we have penciled in now is Green Bay. We're north of 30 minutes here, so we've got kind of against the clock to decide this one. So where do we go for the 5th? I'll put it on you.
No, you use it. No, we're gonna shame you next week.
Okay, we can shame it. So you want to go Dallas and put the shame on me for this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, we'll take that because it's good. And look at the graphics, how quick that was to respond. Titans minus 8.5, Chargers minus 10, Arizona minus 2.5, Buffalo plus 3.5, and then Dallas minus 4.5. I think that's a solid 5 considering how weird this week has been as we were sort of talking through it. I think, like you mentioned, we're not going to see a lot over 1,000. I think it's going to be really spread out, and I think we're going to be okay. I've never felt bad about a top 5, but the results have never really been as rewarding as we anticipated.
It's just too difficult on a Thursday morning. It really, realistically, this has become sort of an opening look at the board and plausibilities, and there's just too much information that comes out between now and Saturday to take it as gospel.
We are going to cut up your week 1 statement of us being collectively north of 60% and use that on a blooper reel for many, many, many seasons to come. Let's settle the top 5 right now. Last week, you went with Cincinnati and I went with Miami. And I don't have the week 13 tallies. So there's some uncertainty on whether the 2-game gap and deficit that I have been trying to overcome has been shortened to 1, or if we're getting close to a bit of a dormy stage where you have 3 up with 5 weeks to go. But we had the article published last week because I was off-site in New Jersey, couldn't get to the video recording, doing it now. So on the phone, you got the first pick a week ago. So that sets me up. So Cincinnati 953. Oh, the Dolphins were 1,500. So that wasn't even close.
Yeah, you barely got that.
So the deficit is 1 with 5 weeks to play. I get first pick this week. And just to keep it fair, because you were so generous to put Dallas in the top 5, I will force myself to take Dallas as the most selected and give you the floor.
Oh, that is generous.
I'm very kind.
I'm going to go with. Oh boy, I'll go with the Cardinals.
Arizona -2.5. I'm going Dallas -4.5. The deficit is 1 game for the steak dinner wager with 5 weeks to play. We will see what the tally shows Saturday afternoon. But before we let everyone go, Survivor down to 23 people. It's becoming a little less interesting to talk about, I'd say, with so many players now very dependent on who they have remaining. But something I will bring up. So yesterday I did a Spotify green room, and we had Evans Sports on the green room. He came in with a question. So he has all of the 3 big favorites this week available to pick. And I have a feeling I know your answer, but you can see him right about 6 spaces down. So he's got any of the big favorites available to pick. And his question was, do you go with one of the 3 big favorites, which were either Kansas City, Tennessee, or the Green Bay Packers? Do you go with either of those 3, or do you go with something smaller and hope for a big upset? So if you're in his situation, you're looking at a huge prize pool at the end. You've got all those teams available. Are you swerving and going a completely different direction, or are you just trying to get through what is a really weird week?
No, I think at this point, these players change their strategy up a little bit, and they just worry about getting through.
So you would go back and go with one of the big favorites rather than trying to swerve.
I would. Well, you go with the games that you feel most confident on? That leaves you all the options for Christmas week, obviously. So, when you're at this point, when you had this kind of equity, it's not dire to get yourself off, get off these popular games. Realistically, you're just trying to get through at this point, and not do anything silly. Everything's going to be, all these games are getting much more spread out because people have fewer options. So you don't know for sure that 80% of the pool is going to be on a certain game.
So if you were in his spot, and we're not suggesting he's going to make his own decision, but you have all of those teams available. What's your standout Survivor pick this week, would you say? For me, I think it is to be quite honest, if I haven't used the Denver Broncos, I'm going Broncos.
Yeah, well,
because I don't think Denver is going to be nearly as popular as Tennessee. I don't think they're going to be nearly as popular as the Chargers. I don't think they're going to be as popular as the Packers, for those that have it.
Well, you need Green Bay for Christmas week, right?
You do.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Denver's looking pretty good.
I think it's a chance to bet on a team that has a very good chance to win, but also a team that probably is not going to be the most popular of the week and a chance to get through on an upset. And you got the flu situation in Detroit. We don't know what's going on there, but that number took a hard U-turn yesterday. So,
and I wouldn't even like Kansas City would actually make me a little nervous, even though they are on a roll. It just seems something. Those Raiders show up. I think the Raiders beat them in Kansas City last year, or was it one of those nip and tuck games? They show up against Kansas City.
Yep, they got the win last year. Did not look good a few weeks ago on Sunday Night Football, but now it's a spot I would agree that would make me nervous. So Broncos from a survivor pick, I think definitely the interesting side this week. Any final notes to leave the viewers on for NFL Week 14?
No, congrats on the cash, and keep up the good work, and get yourself in that money. Yeah,
a big win for Andrew, and I need like the one late 5-0 to sort of get you to jump up. I've got a case of the 3-2s going on. There's one game every week that doesn't quite bounce your way.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think I had last year went through the first 12 weeks with nothing worse than a 3-2.
That's
first. So it's steady Eddie gets you there, but there's just too many people here. It's going to be tough to catch those people at the top. It's just it's difficult. One mistake and it's bad.
And people there's so many 4-1s, 5-0s at the top every single week. Those guys have been up there for the last 8-9 weeks at the top, and they're just maintaining. So need to find some winners. He is LVC. I'm Adam Chernoff for Covers.com. This was Football Betting Contest Countdown for NFL Week 14. Sunday Night Football. Bet now, bet later with Jason Logan. Live stream here on Twitter. And if you're a fan of Canadian football, it's Grey Cup week. We'll have CFL live streams tomorrow and Sunday to get you ready for the big game. See you next Thursday back here for Football Betting Contest Countdown.